Do you want to get started? I know you sent me this clip of Kyle Kulinski earlier today talking about Theo Von. Theo Von actually came up when we were talking to Kyle like a week ago, except I couldn't remember his name. I was like, who's that fucking idiot guy? He's the Louisiana guy. He got canceled like 20 years ago for saying white people shouldn't date black people. What's this guy's deal? And then lo and behold, here's Kyle making his own video about Theo Von like a week later.
Yeah, Theo Von's obviously blown up a lot recently. Kyle talks about some of the reasons why. But more importantly, I think he has some critical words about Theo Von, kind of calling out a real hypocrisy that I don't see enough people pointing out. Because don't get me wrong, I get the appeal of Theo Von. I agree with people that say he's like more tolerable than Joe Rogan, less annoying than some of the other actors in this, arena of the internet, the kind of Joe Rogan comedy bro scene, right? I do think he's one of the more tolerable, and he is genuinely one of the more funny as well. But I think Kyle does a great job in this video, Zach, explaining how his influence is still, unfortunately, pretty nefarious despite his, crocodile tears. So this is pretty interesting. I totally agree with Kyle here. And yeah, let's check it out. We're going to hear a little bit from Theo Von from his recent statements on Gaza. And then we're going to hear Kyle's response.
Yeah, because he's made a couple videos about Gaza. I remember he had Gabor Mate on his show as well.
Yep. This is the maybe second or third time it's come up. But, I'm sure a lot of people have heard most of the comments. So we can kind of catch the end of what Theo was saying here and then get Kyle's response.
Oh, yeah.
I don't. Sometimes I feel like I should say something. I'm not a geologist or geographer or anything like that, so I don't know a lot of some of it I do know though. Like I know the basic.
I'm not a geologist. Oh, I know I'm not a geologist, guys, but I'm going to talk about Gaza anyway. I know, like what?
That's what I'm talking about. Like this guy is so dumb. I'm sorry. I know you have to have a level of intelligence to put together a stand-up act and to work hard and to be able to do comedic timing. That takes a level of intelligence, but it's a different kind of intelligence entirely than analyzing a foreign policy situation. So just like I don't want to come across as like hoity-toity, but just how stupid this guy really gets to me sometimes.
I think he kind of plays it up. Like he really is kind of the anti-Ben Shapiro. Like Ben Shapiro's whole thing was like, I'm so smart. I really think Theo Von like intentionally dumbs himself down a bit before it gets on air.
It makes sense. It's really popular right now to be a fucking idiot on the internet, to be low IQ, Asmongold, Theo Von. Like it kind of pisses me off too, because these guys pretend and they project like they're working class individuals. Like, oh, I'm just a working guy. Like, oh, I'm just a regular average Joe. The average Joe is about 100 times smarter than this guy. Okay. They're just force fed this crap. And so they think everybody else around them is this dumb. So they better act this dumb too. That's why a guy like Theo Von really gets under my skin a little bit. I thought that he could be reached. The more I looked into the guy, I was like, no, never mind. The one snippet of him talking to Bernie Sanders when I like kind of first came across him, I was like, maybe this guy will be cool. And then you find out everything else and you're just like, you're just a con man like everyone else.
Well, let's hear from the man.
Some of it I do know though. Like I know the basics of the issues over there, but for me, it's just like how I feel like you see all these photos of people, just children, women, people, body parts, just people like putting their kids back together. And I just can't believe that we're watching that and that more isn't said about it. And so I'm not saying anyone else needs to say anything, but I think I'm just that more isn't said about it by me. So I just, I want to be able to speak up about that I think we're watching probably like, one of the sickest things that's ever happened. And I'm sorry if I've kind of haven't said about it. I've tried to talk about it and learn about it. But I don't know. Maybe I just wanted to say something. I don't even know what to do. And it's crazy because our country is also complicit in it's in it and has been for a long time. And it's just kind of interesting because then you just realize, oh, well, I'm a member of this country, but what we want sometimes doesn't matter, and you just have to be a member of a place and your government is making other choices. So I don't know if I said that correctly, or I don't even know exactly what I said, but I just have, it just like been making me really sick. And I feel like I just needed to say something.
Okay, what's
That
crazy?
I think
about
you
this-
don't.
I don't know if Kyle brings this up because I haven't seen the Kyle portion yet, but this dude was just in Qatar with Donald Trump on a PR press tour, basically, like laundering the reputation of Donald Trump. Like, who the fuck does he think is doing this? Is all I have to say.
Yeah, 100%. That's what Kyle's about to get into.
To think that. I'm not asking you to do anything. But I just have to say that so I'm not sitting by, there's that piece inside of me like, why wouldn't you, can you say something? There's people that can't even speak and you can say something, and so that's how I just had to just speak up. Anyway, I think maybe it's starting to make it about me there at the end, but yeah. So just praying for those people and just the grief that is all going to cause. You notice, like, what are we doing? But and I know that this has happened to other ethnicities and other cultures. I know that it's happening to other places too.
I mean, look, it's a human reaction. I wish more people would kind of react like that and think about this stuff and feel it and say something, do anything in order to try to make a dent and move the ball in the right direction. We need to start a campaign to save Theo Von, though, man. We do. Because I'm telling you, at the exact same time, within an hour of watching this clip, right, and being reminded of the clip where he's talking to Gabor Mate and crying over Gaza, within an hour of that, this came across my feed. Ivanka Trump, Miami, look good on you, Theo Von. Come back and visit us soon. So here's Theo hanging out with Jared Kushner, hanging out with Ivanka Trump at some fancy schmancy restaurant in Miami. But that's not even all.
What Kyle doesn't realize is that Theo Von was actually on a diplomatic mission here, Zach. He went to Miami to bring this message of peace, to beg to the Trumps and the Kushners, whatever the fuck, to liberate the Palestinians. That's clearly what's happening in this photo right now. You know what I'm saying? He's clearly dressed for the occasion on a diplomat's mission.
Guys, this is why the left can't get anywhere. This is why we're always losing, guys. Can you not see it with your own eyes? Calling out Theo Von when he's clearly doing the right thing. He said he cares about the issue. He said he cares about it, and he has a high profile, and now he's dining with them. I promise you, Jared Kushner is going to leave a changed man after this dinner. Why are you opposing progress, Gavin?
All of it, dog. Look what we got here. Theo Von makes surprise appearance at Trump's speech to troops in Qatar. As president reveals, Barron introduced him to the podcaster. I'm not trying to be an asshole, man. I promise you I'm really not. But, I mean, this is such a massive contradiction. You got to square that. I mean, there's no squaring that circle, bro. There's no square. At the same time, you're like tearing up over Gaza and having this like deep human moment. You're schmoozing with the same fucking assholes that are making it happen. I really think this is one of those things that frustrates me to no end, I mean, and we've all seen it. We've all seen these big accounts that are like, that talk about this issue, care about this issue, or at the very least, they're pretending to. And then they're also like rah Trump at the same fucking time. It's like, who do you think is sending the money? Who do you think is sending the weapons right now? Who do you think has low-key greenlit the entire extermination and annihilation of a group of people, the Palestinians in Gaza? Who do you think did that? It was Trump. And the reason why he's taken hundreds of millions from the Israel lobby, from Miriam Adelson.
And that's such a good point. And it's like, how do you fucking square that circle if you're someone like Theo Von, who clearly, I mean, unless you want to say it's just 100% performance and it's 100% an act, he did seem genuinely emotionally affected by what we're all witnessing, the absolute horrors and devastations. But, he then goes on to say, I can speak. I can actually say something. Some people have no voice. I have a voice, so I have to talk out about this. And it's like, that's true. But you know what else you could do? People say actions speak louder than words. And you actually are someone who's in the vicinity of the folks making these decisions, the people that are actually in power. Clearly, you're in photos with them, whining and dining at Mar-a-Lago and in Miami. So, it would be a lot more impressive, Theo. It would probably, help you sleep even better at night if you actually did something about it. Not just say, oh, I feel bad about this. I feel really bad. Oh, it's so sad. No, you can actually do something. You might just be a dumbass comedian, but you're actually a lot more powerful than your average person. You actually could say this directly to Donald Trump. You could actually publicly rescind your endorsement of him. You could say, I apologize for whitewashing the image of this monster and laundering his reputation on my podcast, instead of, questioning him, interrogating him about this war crime that we're seeing unfold, this genocide. So that's what he could actually do if he wanted to do something. But in lieu of that, all this other, crocodile tear shit kind of just seems like that. Crocodile tears, virtue signaling.
Yeah, I think he is the kind of right winger who is in this media bubble that I think we could best create a parallel to somebody like Marjorie Taylor Greene that we saw the other day with Cenk Uygur, right? Like they consider themselves anti-war, like, for reasons that are, not necessarily related to an actual connection to the cause. Like a lot of conservative Republicans have kind of pivoted on Israel, excuse me. Like we showed how Marjorie Taylor Greene, when she first got into Congress, was talking about how nobody was more pro-Israel in all of Congress than her, right? We talked about how she initially supported the, anti-BDS bill that she later grew a lot of attention for opposing just a few weeks ago, right? So she's kind of made this pivot. And I think, I don't say this lightly, but I think a lot of those people are impacted by this like anti-Semitic sphere of content creators, right? Who have really honed in on Gaza because it is an atrocity and because it is being committed by the nation of Israel, right? And it's easy for them to kind of get their message across it. So I wouldn't be surprised if in his free time, a guy like Theo Von is listening to Jake Shields or scrolling through Jake Shields' feed. I wouldn't be surprised if he's listening to Candace Owens. I wouldn't be surprised if he's listening to Tucker Carlson. I wouldn't be surprised if those are the folks that are shaping his skepticism and his, point of view when it comes to Gaza. And obviously he still does have some human empathy in him. That's why he's able to be emotionally responsive to those devastating images. But I think he's coming at it from the exact opposite side of the aisle that somebody like Kyle or us would be coming at it from.
Theo?
Yeah.
Interesting. I didn't really get that vibe so much. He seemed like just like he was responding to the reality of what's happening more so than like it being shaped by any specific narrative. That's what I got. And at most, I kind of just viewed it as like him pretending, like the worst interpretation would be him just pretending to care about it so that he kind of gets off the hook for actually meeting behind the scenes with the Kushners and the Trumps and shit like that. But I don't know. I didn't really get that vibe necessarily.
Oh, yeah. I think his media diet totally shapes his opinion on the issue. I think that's why he is able to go and dine with the Kushners. I think that is why he'll go and hang out with Tucker
but a lot of
Carlson.
people have like kind of turned on the Iraq war recently. And
that's the exact same thing that I was mentioning with Marjorie Taylor Greene, though. That's an entire apparatus. That's an entire section of the right wing that's really popular right now.
For sure. I just don't think it's all driven by anti-Semitism. I think a lot of people did grow up during the Iraq war, saw how useless and what a waste of human lives and resources that it was, how it did not improve our country, how it didn't make us safer. And they don't want us to repeat that mistake, So maybe that's an element of it, but I just think that it has probably a little bit more to do with that in the case of someone like Theo Von.
I think in the case of Theo Von, sure, but not in the case of the content creators that I imagine he's consuming on a day-to-day basis, like Tucker Carlson or Candace Owens. I think at that point, it's very much about the anti-Semitic component.
I definitely think that's an element of it, for sure. I mean, we've talked a lot about that. Jake Shields, for sure. And I know Theo Von has said some like borderline fucked up things about Jewish people. I know he was like, the fucking Jews control the media. Like,
yeah, that's why I think his media diet's shaping his POV.
For sure. I mean, he has a right-wing media diet, for sure. I just mean based on that one clip, I don't necessarily think it came off like, he was specifically saying that because of anti-Semitism. Like, I do think it's very possible he just has seen a lot of the horrific images, as he mentioned, children or parents trying to put their fucking children back together after bombs blow their heads off and shit like that. It's pretty hard not to be affected by that, regardless of, how much anti-Semitic content you're consuming. So I do think but
then to go hang out with the guy that's doing it.
For sure. Well, that's why I'm saying the least charitable interpretation of this is that he just said that to cover for himself and make it look like, oh, I do actually care, right? Even though I'm not actually going to do anything, I'm going to say something. Because again, it's a lot easier to talk than fucking do anything. Actions speak louder than words, as I said.
No, I agree that that's likely the case, but I think it's because he has a lot of audience overlap with people like Candace Owens, with people like Dan Bilzerian, probably with people like Jake Shields, and those are people who have made this a focal point issue because of their not because of their commitment to the liberation of oppressed people, not because of their, resolve towards the injustice in Palestine, because you'll notice that they'll never speak up about any other global injustices, and they'll continuously support the fascists in power, right? So I just think all of that shapes his reaction in a way that it's like, I can't even really like feel like you're a sincere person. You know what I mean?
Well, yeah, that's kind of the whole point of this segment, is that it's hard to take anything that Theo Von is saying seriously, given the people he's hanging out with behind the scenes. But yeah, I guess my only other thing I'd say about Theo Von is I do feel like he kind of appeals to a slightly more normie demographic than someone like Dan Bilzerian or even Candace Owens. Like Theo Von to me does genuinely seem like he's kind of just known more for like his comedy and stuff than any of his political takes. Whereas someone like Candace Owens like is primarily known as a political commentator. I think part of Theo Von's shtick is that he's like just a normal guy, bro. Like, I don't really have a bunch of intelligent opinions. Like, clearly, you know, he didn't really speak about that all that eloquently or like in a very, you know, educated manner. So I do think that he kind of speaks more just to a normie audience than like the really deranged conspiracy mongers like Candace Owens and Jake Shields and people like that. But you're right that those people are definitely probably part of his media diet.
Yeah, I totally agree with you, by the way, that he's not nearly as bad as those folks. I just think that if you spend a lot of time listening to Theo Von, you'll likely get recommended somebody like Candace Owens. You'll likely get recommended somebody like Tucker Carlson, and you'll likely hear him speak positively, if not glowingly, about a lot of those individuals and have positive experiences with them. So I do think that it is like more like a entry point to that kind of video. And not that that's, you know, his fault or anything like that, but I do think that it all comes into play when you're like, how could you be this authentically moved by something and then go right around and like, you know, try and do PR for the person responsible.
Right. 100%. Either way, let's hear a little bit more from Kyle, because I actually think he does a great job in a second explaining part of why Theo Von specifically is more nefarious than he might appear on the surface.
He allowed Israel to annex the Golan Heights, which is Syrian territory. He moved the embassy to Jerusalem. He did the Abraham Accords, which was literally the whole point of that was a massive middle finger to Palestinians saying, we're going to work around you. We don't need to work with you. You're going to be occupied for forever, so just take it. That's what the point was. That was what the point was. And now here he is. He lifted the moratorium. Ready for this? Theo Von should know this, but I'm sure he doesn't. Trump lifted the moratorium on the 2,000-pound bombs being used in Gaza. The 2,000-pound bombs were so extreme that the U.S. didn't even use them in Iraq because the idea was these are going to kill civilians. If we use them, let's just not use them. Israel, they're using them, and it was Trump that lifted the moratorium and said, be my guest, go right ahead. So this is the guy you're schmoozing with. This is the guy you support, by the way, right? He had him on his podcast. Sort of like with Rogan, he fucking played patty cakes with him. He actually had a lot of funny moments. He was able to humanize Trump in a way that I don't think others could, because the other people don't have that sort of down-to-earth, aw shucks mentality that just come across as really authentic and sincere to people. So whether he did it on purpose or not, I don't really care. Fundamentally, he ended up sort of humanizing Trump. And the same shit that you're sitting there crying over, talking about how horrible this world is and how it all needs to stop, this guy made the world that. He contributed.
Yeah, and that's such a great point from Kyle. I do agree that basically out of all the MAGA adjacent sort of Rogan bros, none of them actually did a better job, you know, intentionally or unintentionally, of humanizing Donald Trump than Theo Von. There were some downright charming moments from that interview. Remember, Zach, where Trump was asking Theo about like, what's it like to do cocaine? And Theo's like, oh, it's fucking awesome, bro. You'll never go to bed and shit. And like, there were some really funny moments that if you were just a total normie, you know, a complete ignoramus, not paying attention to politics, you know, you maybe just like comedy, you see some of those clips, you might think, hell yeah, bro, of course I'm going to vote for this guy. He's funny, he's relatable, he'll chat with a dude like Theo Von for a couple hours off the cuff, unlike Kamala Harris, who wouldn't even sit down for more than like 30 minutes for any unscripted conversation whatsoever, right? It was actually pretty brilliant propaganda for Donald Trump. But of course, Theo didn't ask him any tough questions about fucking Israel or about, Mr. President, are you going to continue to fund and, you know, aid and abet this genocide going? No, of course he didn't get any of that. But now that the dude's been elected, all he has is crocodile tears and virtue signaling, which is what's so fucking infuriating. Because obviously, even though we supported Kamala Harris, if we had her on our fucking show, could you imagine glazing her and giving her a softball interview and laughing with her and talking about like what it's like to be on cocaine? Like, no, I'd be like, so I heard you were working tirelessly on a ceasefire. Is that fucking true? Because it better be if you want my vote. You know, shit like that. Like, it would have been a serious interview. I would never entertain the idea of having on a presidential candidate for anything less. But of course, you know, Theo Von is a comedian. Woo! he's just a clown, just a dumbass, a fucking idiot. So he gets away with it. It's ridiculous.
And not only that, but it's the same thing when it comes to his analysis on domestic issues, right? He didn't bring up any of the hollowing out of the middle class that happened and further happened under Donald Trump, how he just did a brand new NAFTA, how all he did during his first term was cut taxes for the rich, didn't do a damn thing to uplift the working class, didn't do a damn thing to, bring domestic manufacturing back to its former glory, all the things that he campaigned on, right? And not only that, you do have Theo Von, who does speak really eloquently about that. He talked about how you feel like you're being duped if you actually care about civic politics. You actually feel like you're a schmuck if you invest in your community. You feel like you're being had. You feel like you're just investing in a shell corporation and that there is no meaning, that there is no solidarity, that there's no longer a nation of people who are joined together. And he'll articulate all of that, and then he will literally go and support the con man president, literally the worst motherfucker alive to combat that sort of thing, the person who is an absolute direct embodiment of everything that's wrong with our nation, right? The gluttony, the greed, the addiction to fame and stimulation and all of these kinds of things, right? Something that's Theo Von will on one hand talk about. He'll talk about, oh, I've given up porn and, don't J the P no more because, I'm trying to not overstimulate my noodle. You know what I mean? Got to stimulate my other noodle now. I done way too much stimulating my bigger noodle. You know what I mean? And he'll say shit like that. And then it's like, bro, why don't you think a little more critically about why our society is turning into that, right?
Look out the door. If you hear an ambulance, the Vanguard will be there, sir. The Vanguard will be there, sir. The Vanguard will be there, sir. The Vanguard will be there. The Vanguard will be there. Be there.